Real talk, real finance, real growth. Welcome back to FinTalk, where we sit down with leaders shaping what's next for business, tech, and finance. Today's guest is a good friend and one of the most forward-thinking people I know, Bayo Akins. We actually went to the same university together, and years later, he's now helping Web3 businesses scale, not just in the UAE, but across the world. Today, we're diving into a topic that everyone's curious about, crypto and finance, and how the two worlds are finally starting to collide. Whether you're an entrepreneur, investor, or just crypto curious, this one's for you. Hey Bayo, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good, my man. I am so excited to have you here today. Like I said in the intro, we met at university, and our journey has been so aligned. And it's just been an amazing experience seeing you grow from
likewise
the university days up until present. But I'd love to hear from your perspective. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about you. Who's Bayo?
That is such a deep question. What kind of question is that to start? Who is Bayo? I guess in relation to this, so I suppose I'm a Web3 professional. Been in the space now, crypto, blockchain, 8-9 years, in a whole bunch of different capacities. I guess right now I'm currently working at a team called Digital Assets, and we're building the Canton network, which is a privacy-focused institutional chain. But prior to this, I've been at companies which scale blockchains, some of the biggest exchanges, crypto compliance companies, a whole bunch in and around the space. So yeah, I would say I wouldn't say I'm a crypto bro, but I would say I'm somewhere in and around that. Yeah.
So how did you get into crypto? Because you've been in the market or in the industry for more than 8 years now.
Yeah, I think you know what it is. I think there's probably a backdrop that made me susceptible to join crypto, and so growing up in London, inner city kid, probably had the same experience as many people. You wanted to be a rapper, you wanted to do football, you wanted to do a whole bunch of stuff around that time, and I think I was just existing through life. And probably around 17, a whole bunch of things happened, but I ended up reading, as cliche as it sounds, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I think Rich Dad Poor Dad, the binary split I got from it is that people are going down one track are more likely to be rich, people going down another track are more likely to be poor. And I think at the time, I was just self-aware to know that I was just doing a whole bunch of the stuff that resonated kind of on the poor side. And maybe being a teenager, early pre-teens, watching MTV Base and seeing the cars and jewels and etc. There was something in me that wanted to have more money than not. And so I was like, oh, you know what? I need to learn more of these aspects around finance, discipline, etc., etc. And so from 17, I went down this rabbit hole, reading, consuming, podcasting, everything that I could at the time. And then it wasn't until I read another book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, which basically, what I took from the book was, you can't just hard work your way to where you want to be. There's an element of luck, but you can kind of manufacture the luck. And so one of the aspects which was interesting in the book was Bill Gates's mum was a teacher in a school, in one of the first schools in the US that had a computer. And so he had to stay after school because his mum was a teacher. And so he played on the computer before anyone had access to it. And so if you compound that over time, it's like he just had an advantage over the market because he was just early to it. And then if you kind of like build around that, and I'm getting to my point, if you build around that, those early times in like Silicon Valley, a whole bunch of the founders co-mingled. Brian Armstrong, who's the founder of Coinbase, was a kind of like a junior developer at Airbnb. And so I was just like, oh, if there's this concentration of talent that build the wave of the internet as we know it, then there should be another one coming at some point. And so skip forwards to final year of uni, actually, when we were doing MMA. I'm not sure if you can remember Aaron, but Aaron, we did a part-time job together selling kind of like retail watches. And he would always talk about crypto. But at the time, I was just like, I don't know what Aaron's talking about. This crypto thing's too abstract for me. And I left it. Then a couple of years later, after kind of like graduating, I went into tech startups. It was probably like the times where Monzo was launching, Starling Bank, etc., as a fintech, etc. And my girlfriend at the time said, oh, you know what? My friend just got rich off crypto. And I was like, what? And then, I was like, how does it work? She described it, and it basically sounded like a Ponzi scheme. So I was like, okay, this is not real. But Aaron mentioned this thing called Bitcoin, and he mentioned this thing called Ethereum. And so back then I was like, oh, you know what? If this guy actually made money, let me look into crypto enough, but let me speak to Aaron again. So we caught up, told me a whole bunch of things around Bitcoin and Ethereum, things that were going on. And so I went into the rabbit hole. And so I tied both of those stories together, because once I went down the rabbit hole, crypto kind of like, it activated a whole bunch of proof points. One is around finance, which is one of the biggest industries. Two, it was early enough that everything was still being built out. And so because everything was still being built out, there isn't clear winners. Three, it's kind of like this thing where rather than everyone being in Silicon Valley at the same time, it was a global phenomenon. So you can participate from London, from Lagos, from San Francisco, from New York, from Portugal. And so I just felt like, oh, you know what? If there's something to bet your career on, or your time on, this could be my thing. It's just landed, not necessarily landed on my lap, but it's activated my brain in a way that, okay, this is it. And so I ended up just diving into it. And then the last kind of like tick point that confirmed it for me is I went to a hackathon. And if you don't know what a hackathon is, it's basically a weekend where predominantly developers stay in a room, they eat, and they work on a project. And the team that I worked on were all engineers. And I was like one of the few kind of like business people. But blockchain back then, this is probably 2016, 17, was all developers, it was all high tech. I didn't know what's going on. The only thing I knew was humans. So when it came to the pitching of what we built, we just pitched a compelling story. And we ended up winning the hackathon, even though we didn't have the best technology. And so then it was like, oh, you know what, there's a place for, I don't want to say salespeople, but there's this place for business people outside of the tech people at that time. And then I just dove into it and never looked back. That's the long-winded, I'm not sure if that's too long, but that's a long, shortened version with the key points of the story.
Can I just say that was so captivating, because you've explained the story in a way where, unless you're actually experiencing it, you wouldn't assume that there's 2 or 3 different paths that essentially were happening at the same time, which is you having a part-time job and working with someone that had already a understanding of a very immature or not so mainstream industry.
Yep.
You having always an interest of developing wealth for yourself and of course future generations, right?
Yep.
And then the third element being the element of luck and timing.
Exactly.
Where the market is existing, it's growing, there's people making fortunes from it very, very early on, and you are presented with the knowledge of the opportunity itself.
Exactly.
All 3 of these coming together at the same time culminated in you making the decision of, do you know what, let me try and go to this hackathon. And no, I'm not a technical person, but I can build on top of the technicality that's already there.
Exactly.
And that's so inspiring.
Appreciate it.
Do you know what's funny? I remember you telling me you're going to this hackathon and me being like, okay, dope, have fun, let me know how it goes. And then you eventually telling me, oh yeah, we won that and we did this and that. At the time, we had no idea that that specific hackathon was going to have such a massive impact in your career.
For sure.
So that's, of course, a huge spectrum in terms of the experiences, the opportunities that arise. And of course, you've had an amazing career already. You've worked with some of the biggest brands in the industry. And I'm just really keen, from your experience over the last few years, are there specific trends or lessons that you've seen that you could share with someone that is currently learning about crypto or is keen to know more about it?
Yeah, I think one of the, I remember back in the early days, and I'm not sure, we have a group chat, and I probably should screenshot some of the messages, but in like the 2018 time when I used to talk about crypto, everyone would be like, nah, there's no regulation, oh, it's a scam, it's too early, this, that, and the other. You were, I remember, I can't remember if it was exactly, but I remember you and my cousin were in the same group chat and you were kind of doing that tone. But I think one of the biggest challenges people have to overcome when looking at crypto is the aspect of it's just a way to make money. It's like a money generation scheme. And I feel like to really kind of get what's going on is you have to kind of go down to first principles. Yeah. And the simple thing is if you question it, what is money? Money is basically a mechanism that we use to coordinate, right? Before we use, I suppose, dollars, pounds, dirham, etc. We might have used gold. You might have gone all the way back to the barter system where it's cattle. I have 5 fish, you have 10 rice, and we can swap 5 fish for 10 rice. But the next day, I have 5 fish again, you have 10 rice, but you don't want 5 fish from me anymore. So I'm stuck with my fish, but I want the rice. So we need some sort of medium in the middle to be able to exchange, right? And so when it comes to kind of like coordinating, money is an amazing tool to do that. But the issue with money in how we exist is back then, we would, well, okay, I don't know how we look. Okay, we were raised in Portugal, but let's say from uni we were in the UK.
Yeah.
So we transact in pounds, right? But now we're in Dubai and we transact in dirhams. So I went to London last week and I have £30 cash that I can't use here anymore. Even though the money is like, it's good money, it's real money. I got it from the cash machine. But in the UK, I can use it. Here, I can use my dirham, but I can't go to London and use my dirham there. It's no longer good. So it's like, if I can travel as a person, how comes I can't use one of the most fundamental communication tools across border? And so that's another thing. Obviously, we have digital payments now, but then if you look on the back end, someone's doing the conversion, and so I'm still there's a fee that I'm losing because someone's taking my dirham for pound and taking a little bit, and pounds for dirham taking a little bit. And so I feel like when it comes to cryptos or the premise of how I understood it was, if we can have an asset that we can transact with that has no limitations on border and etc., then we'll be able to flow funds much easier. We'll be able to transact. We'll be able to do stuff, especially globally. If you think about it from a simple perspective, if I can send a text message to the UK, why can't I send a virtual dirham or virtual pound that does the same thing in the UK? So crypto, in a sense, should run on the same rails as how we interact with the internet. I think that's the first premise. The next thing is, if you look at it from that sense, there's a democratization of how finance works. So it's like, I can create a crypto coin, you can create a crypto coin. We can attribute different value to it. Value can go up and down. Kind of like how, if you look at social media, things go viral. This video could go viral and it could be super popular today. Next week is no longer popular, we don't care. And so if you use this, I think crypto has used those same mechanisms with the internet, and people have abused it. So things have gone super popular and then they've crashed and they're irrelevant. But the only issue is that when it goes popular, everyone goes, oh yeah, you know what, crypto's rallying, I want to buy. But then it crashes and then people lose money and they go, okay, this thing's a scam. So I think the general premise I would say is like, if you understand kind of fundamentals of money, if you understand how we interact now as humans globally across the world, then you can kind of start to kick that, oh, you know what, this crypto thing, there's definitely something in it that is beyond just a scam. I think I don't want to bore with like the back end advancements that are working in that sense, because I think for crypto to be really smooth, you probably don't want to know how it works. Kind of like FaceTime. I FaceTime my mum, I have no idea. I just know her face pops up on the screen and we can talk to each other. I don't know if it's going through this wire and connecting to this undersea thing and I think that's predominantly where we want to get to with crypto. But the benefit of, if you think about FaceTime, is that you can buy stock in the company which runs the software, as in Apple, to be able to do that. Similarly, that if infrastructure and how payments work, you can buy a piece of this crypto or that crypto that's facilitating that. So I think that's how I would answer it in a, I wouldn't say a short way, but I think that those are probably the key points, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I really appreciate the detail that you go into about fatiguing the conversation itself, right? Or giving fatigue to the conversation. There's two train of thoughts that I have. One of them is cycles and timing.
Yep.
And then the second one is the actual mechanics itself.
Sure.
So me personally, I'm a very detail-oriented person, and I love to know how things work. As in, maybe not on FaceTime, I don't necessarily need to know how that works. But from the crypto element, it's great to be able to look at a cryptocurrency and be able to say, is it worth putting my money here or not? Like you've mentioned the concept of let's say, meme coins versus stable coins. And of course, we know stable coins and what they are.
Yeah.
But maybe some people don't necessarily know. So is it worth us doing a quick
high level,
breakdown of what's a stable coin, what's a meme coin, what to look into when deciding to invest or not, and some of the warning signs?
Okay, cool. This is not investment advice, right? But I would say the major ballparks that kind of like crypto seem to fall under is the famous one is Bitcoin. The use case really that people attach to it is digital gold. So obviously the more countries print money, the more your fiat-based currencies devalue. The idea is that Bitcoin can be a stable internet version of gold. It has a limited supply, and so you can put your assets there and keep it in that regards. The next bulk is kind of like the smart contract based technologies, and like Ethereum, Solana, Countercoin, and the mechanism there is that you can build smart contracts and you can build technology on top of these blockchains, and for the blockchains to coordinate incentives between different parties, a coin is usually attributed in that sense. So I think the general structure of a kind of like a crypto ecosystem in the smart contract version is that you have the token, which might be used for gas, might be used for rewards, but the general incentive of the token is to help people in the ecosystem kind of like communicate and work. Oftentimes there are what we call validators in an ecosystem, which are independent parties, which their job is to keep the system running, right? And the coins are used to reward them for keeping the system running. And so you can reward them in ways of, okay, I have to put a certain amount of money up, I put my technology, and I have to run this machinery, and then I get rewarded. There's others where I have to build amazing apps, I have to keep my infrastructure, then I get rewarded with this token. And then the token itself can be sold on a secondary market where most people buy from. So Bitcoin, digital gold, smart contracts tokens is for coordination and apps and things of that nature. Meme coins are more so like, I don't want to say culture coins, but meme coins tend to have no underlying value. It's more just a vibe, if that makes sense. So it's like, oh, you know what? Pepe or Dogecoin or Trump coin, they're all meme coins in the sense that because you can launch a coin and because people find internet culture funny enough to buy the coin, I think the game people are playing in there is that you can make more money because you assume you're early enough and someone else will buy it off you. But really, there's no underlying value in that sense. And so if you're looking at it from a purchase perspective, I assume you're just looking at it like how viral can this coin go? That's why people are, but again, with virality comes and goes. So it can go up and it can crash quite heavily. And so I think those are kind of like the loose, and then stable coins. Stable coins are basically coins attached to a currency. So things like USDC is a stable coin for dollars. USDT is a stable coin for dollars. There's speculation around stable coins for dirham, stable coins for pounds, for euro, etc. And so their prices shouldn't fluctuate with $1 should be one USDC, and it shouldn't go to $2. If it goes up or down, the stable coin is broken. And so that's kind of like the loose framework for the different coins, if that makes sense. And just to add, the last one is NFTs, which they aren't coins, they're tokens. And so they're more so, the idea around NFTs is that on the internet, you can have your profile picture. I can copy and paste your profile picture and save it. And then I can post your profile picture. But how do we know who's got the authentic profile picture? NFT is basically writing in the blockchain that your profile picture was the authentic one. And so that can be used for a whole bunch of technologies. But that's the main, I would say, 5 buckets of coins. And so their uses and their values are different, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I think that's the clearest breakdown or explanation of different cryptocurrencies and the smart contracts and technologies that I've ever heard. So, I
Hey,
mean, you know, I
I'm
like to do
trying.
my research.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
like,
that's good. That's
damn,
good.
sir.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, it's good to know I'm decent at my job.
Dude, you're more than decent, right? And just pulling on our personal relationship here, you're one of the individuals that I look for when I know I need to elevate myself, right?
Appreciate it.
As in terms of our backgrounds, the way that we grew up, the way that we've aligned from university to post-university careers, you know, family focus and all sorts of stuff, and of course the projection of being an alpha and doing what you need to do to be the person that you need to be. You're one of the people that I look at and do a sense check of where are we at, where are we not at, where do we need to be at, and then being able to quite literally have meetings and conversations, which is okay, this is what we're done, this is what we need to be doing, how do we go to the next level? So the reason why I say this is, sir, you are more than good at what you do, and
Thank you.
you know we need to give you the credit that you deserve, because you know you deserve it for sure.
Appreciate it.
Picking up on the 2 points that I mentioned earlier. So one was cycles and timing, and the second one was the description and breakdown of what each one of the different cryptocurrencies are. Now, when it comes to timing, of course, there's cycles. In crypto is the same thing. We've
Yep.
had, you know, pretty much 2017. We've
Yep.
had, you know, COVID season and all sorts of stuff. Two things. Have you identified specific cycles in the crypto industry?
Yep.
And the second question is it too late?
Okay, the first question, there's obviously hindsight is
2020.
it's 2020, right? So like I can look back and say, oh, you understand why this happened, you understand why that happened, and you can try and project into the future why different things would happen. I think there's a couple of different debates in crypto. One of the big debates is around Bitcoin's halving, and the idea that Bitcoin as a mechanism over time gets harder and harder to mine the coins. And because it gets harder and harder, the coins become rarer, and so the value should go up. But often around every 4 years or so, Bitcoin halves, and apparently that kind of like breaks the market, and then it dips and it goes again. And this time it hasn't really happened. Some also, that's one area of thought. Another area of thought is the global liquidity cycles. And so if you look at 2021 and the cycle around there and NFTs and how things went crazy, you also have to pay attention to how countries printed dollars, because, or not necessarily dollars, but printed currency based on COVID, basically. A lot of people were at home, they couldn't work, be productive in the space, but they needed funds, and so governments basically printed a whole bunch of dollars. If you have a whole bunch of people at home with money, they don't have to spend it on commuting, they don't have to spend it on going out because they can't go out. The easiest thing to do is to kind of spend on internet things and internet culture. So people are probably ordering things, but at the same time, it's not ironic that people go to this thing called cryptocurrencies online and, oh, you know what, I can get rich, I'm at home, I'm not going to work, etc. And it kind of shifts the dynamic of how things work. So I think there's the two schools of thought around the cycle. One is the liquidity cycle, the global macro liquidity cycle, and then the other is kind of like the Bitcoin halving. I lean more towards the global macro, because the Bitcoin halving to me is kind of like a crypto created storyline, and we kind of adhere to it loosely. But if you kind of like measure out the chances or the charts, some things were supposed to happen. And in the last rally, when Bitcoin broke 100, there's a whole bunch of the indicators that we expect crypto markets to perform like. It didn't hit at all. So it's like, but then the price has come down, and so that hasn't been affected. So I think like we've deviated from that, and partly it's because I believe, to answer your second question, it's because crypto is becoming a bit more institutional now. And one of the most interesting things recently is that some of the early adopters of things like Bitcoin, who were anti-establishment, cypherpunks, they bought Bitcoin in when it was dollars, tens, and now they're basically all billionaires. Over this cycle, I think there's been up to date about 900 billion in kind of like Bitcoin or crypto transfer from that profile to more institutional profile now. And I think institutional profiles probably have a longer lens on how they buy an asset, how they hold an asset, and they expect it to perform. And so that's why I think the cycle is changing and the metrics are changing, because it's just a whole different profile of the type of person who's owning crypto if you look at it purely from an asset perspective. And so if you look at the crypto market today, let's say it's around 3 trillion. The global asset market is about 400 trillion. And institution and crypto as a technology, or blockchain as a technology, the underlying technology for crypto, makes finance way more efficient in a whole bunch of ways. It makes the asset market way more efficient in a whole bunch of ways. And so if you say, oh, we've actually just got to 300 trillion with kind of like these retail early adopters, if we could start to tokenize some of these assets that exist in the real world and people are used to, put them on more efficient rails, then you can open up that 3 trillion market, crypto today, to that 400 trillion market, assets of the world. And so even if you go from like a doubles perspective, or you've seen like there's so much potential value to capture, and that's what I'm excited about, and that's why my focus kind of flipped over in that sense. So I don't think you're too early. I think maybe you're too early for I bought this random thing and it just went up and I don't know how it worked and it was a meme coin, etc. Maybe that kind of like chaos is gone, but the adoption of like crypto as a asset class, as a technology class, I still think is super early.
That aligns perfectly with a question that I had in mind next for you, which is your journey again. So you've gone from very much a crypto-focused sales type of roles into now really establishing not just yourself, but Web3 and crypto into the traditional finance spectrum.
Yeah.
For me personally, of course, with Finalytics especially, one of the main things that we're working on is also identifying how to provide SMEs with the crypto elements side of financial management optimization as well. Because as you know, better than most people, crypto is readily available to multinationals up to a certain extent, but not to the other segments. For you, where do you see, or how do you see this shift going over the next few years in terms of the adoption of crypto for the larger multinationals and day-to-day operations?
Yeah, I think for them it's interesting, right? Because on one side, stable coins is basically digital dollars and it's super efficient. And so if you're doing transfers, especially cross-border transfers, having a lot of people interact with the same asset that can settle automatically, you can send it. I can send you as a bank 100 million worth of this asset and it can hit your account straight away. If you look at how it works today, you wire funds over and there might be a T+2, or there might be a 2-day delay because it has to go through a clearing house, etc., for your broker, blah, blah. And so you don't get the funds for 2 days, but you might need to finance operations for something else. And so you might have to go to a trade financing company and borrow funds for the 2 days, and then they have to prove your eligibility, etc. And so what that then starts to happen is like your collateral is locked up. And so I think the stat is that 80% of collateral in finance is locked. People aren't using it because you need to have funds here just in case the funds I sent you don't make it, or if I send you the funds and you blow up and I can't pull my funds back, but then I need to pay this person and everyone's kind of like intermingled, then then that's kind of like a huge lockup. So collateral is largely locked up in finance today. And so if you unlock that collateral and you make it, okay, I send you the 100 million right now, then you have the ability to act on that right now if you see an opportunity in the market. And often in finance and in business, the general sentiment is that if there's opportunities to create value, you should create that value. You shouldn't really have money sat idle. And so if this unlocks the idle money, then there's way more activity, there's way more kind of like growth for companies, for I suppose economies, etc. And so there's a huge dynamic and there's a huge unlocked happening in that regard. So that's why, and yeah, so I hope that answers kind of like the question. But I think the crypto whales just give you more opportunities to do what you're doing if it's kind of like a profitable business in that sense.
Absolutely. And looking at the SME space, the average founder or the average finance leader,
Yeah.
is there one specific item or specific items they should know about crypto?
Yeah, I think stablecoins is like it's the unsexy aspect of crypto. I think in crypto, I think there's this thought that everything is public, but there's also an idea that there's now, or what's becoming more popular is privacy as well. So oftentimes people don't want to interact on a blockchain because everyone's going to see your transaction. But there's privacy mechanisms now that allow your transaction to go, and only the counterparties involved, and maybe your regulator, if needed, can have visibility over that. So I would say probably those are the two things: is to be aware of what's going on in the stablecoin space and how you can transact, especially if you're doing cross-border payments. Because like it's funny because banks work 9 to 5 days a week, generally. Crypto is 24/7. And like, it's funny because going back to London last week, I wanted to send some money from my UAE account to my London account. My UAE account's with a great bank out here, and my UK account's with a great bank in the UK. And I sent the funds on Friday, and I had to wait till Monday to see the funds. Whereas in crypto, I can send the funds a million times over the weekend, and it can settle in that regard. So I think stuff like that from the consumer, from the SME, from the business owner, from the multinational, stable coins and privacy are probably two things to be on top of.
So at Finalytics, some of the main things that we talk about with our clients is clarity and visibility.
Yeah.
So you've just mentioned the example of being able to transfer funds between your personal UAE account and UK personal accounts, and the gap that happens. Now, it's the same thing with SMEs and even multinationals as well. There's always that gap, clearing house and all sorts of stuff. Now, one of the main things that businesses need is a clear understanding of their financial position.
Yep.
And ideally being able to centralize this information. And that's across SME space, small businesses, startups, scale-ups, and it goes up to the multinational space. And that's why treasury is such a big thing, especially as you grow as a business. What is the impact of crypto in the treasury space for the SMEs as well as the multinationals?
Yeah, I think the treasury is huge. I think two areas which are huge is collateral mobility, and that's unlocking where your money is, and then treasury is managing where, like, the performance of basically your finances, in a sense, globally. Okay, in simple terms, I would assume as a business that you want to be as efficient as you can be, but it's not easy to be efficient in a business that's moving all the time. You have different things to be aware of: legal, finance, marketing, sales, product, etc., depending on the business that you have. And so within that, the treasury piece is a key piece, because you should have visibility, like visibility of where your finances are, what's coming in, when's going, what date you expect payment from this person versus when that should go out, when you need to pay this, etc. It's like a simple idea to say that it should be that you should be on top of it, but as a solution, it's not as simple to execute. And I think because of the rails, because of the different bankings, because of the T+2, because you invoice payment time and all of these things, like, it's hard to be on top of the finances unless you have a dedicated, I don't know, be a salesperson for you, but unless you have like a dedicated team sitting on top of that. And crypto again makes it more efficient, but then you have to have the skills to be able to understand crypto, because it's like I said, there's the different buckets of the field, and at times parts of those buckets increase in value. You might have been willing to receive payment in a specific asset. The value of that asset has now dramatically increased on day one. You might take actions based on that increase because now you think you have more money in the bank. But then the next day, I don't say the next day, but the next period, it might decrease. And so how do you manage all of those flows, or when do you put things in stablecoins, and how do you move things around? I think that these are all elements that a SME can benefit from, because again, there's some SME I've been in crypto now 8-9 years, and there's some people that I've seen and their businesses have just skyrocketed. They just gone from this idea to now doing billions in value in a short amount of time. It's like they're building a rocket ship as it's flying, and you're like, okay, I'm in the middle of the air and the wing is full, it's like flapping, but if you leave the rocket ship, you will die. But so you have to kind of like, and I feel like that's the element that crypto allows to do, at least on the SME side, that actually you can actually hop on a rocket ship using this new technology. On the multinational side, it's like you can be way more efficient and have more, and the scale was so huge that in as silly as it sounds, in crypto I've seen things go 5,000% in a day. And I speak to some of my friends in traditional finance, and they're like, oh yeah, this has gone up 2% and it's great. And I'm like, 2%, okay. But if you're doing 2% and you have 10 billion in value, or you have 1 billion in value, you have 100 million, that's a decent amount to go up in a day, in a week, etc. And so there's, and I'm not saying that all cryptos go 5,000%, but crypto is an industry that's generally kind of like increasing, and so having some sort of exposure to the asset class or to the technology just makes so much sense. Even if you're not trying to buy crypto for appreciation, or you want to beat inflation or anything super creative, just like the efficiency gains alone. I always try to check myself and be like, okay, you've been in this space long enough, and so you have to sell yourself that this makes sense. But I generally think, I don't think I'm I know you say, oh yeah, you're a forward-thinking person, blah, blah, this and the other. I generally think I'm not too smart. I think I've just got like a decent sense of common sense, and like this is kind of, the efficiency gains to me are very obvious. I understand there's other factors that affect that, but to me it's like a no-brainer. And so when I speak to teams that get it, I'm like, yeah, they get it. But when they don't, I'm like, oh, you just haven't had enough of those external dots that I had connect to make it work believable for you.
But that's the difference between a high performer that knows not just that they're a high performer, but also knows the industry in and out, versus someone that hasn't had the same exposure,
exactly,
or simply doesn't have the same level of knowledge. It's like when me and you talk about crypto, every single time I'm learning from you, right?
Sure.
But then if we're talking about institutional finance or finance specifically for SMEs, then of course it will be the other way around as well,
sure,
because that's, what makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And whenever we're doing, as in Finalytics, whenever we're doing a discovery workshop with our clients and we go through from a treasury management perspective, what do? Do you follow step 1, step 2, step 3? And the client says, what's step 2? For me, it's something that's, how do you not get it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But the reality is they don't get it because it's not part of their focus, their wheelhouse.
For sure.
It should be something that they should be doing.
Yeah.
No, it is something that they should be doing, but it isn't. And I think the same concept applies to you here as well, which is, for you, what is a core, simple understanding of crypto and blockchain and all sorts of relevant technologies, for others is very alien and beyond their normal scope of understanding.
For sure. No, 100%. And I think that's exactly it, and why I try to be conscious of. And yeah, because I feel like I've gone down the rabbit hole so deep that sometimes like you pop your head up and you're like, oh, there's actually sunlight, and other people aren't in the dirt and they aren't messing that. So I definitely get the premise, but I say that to kind of emphasize that, because I feel like the reverse effect sometimes happen where people go, oh, you've been in it 8 years, this, that, and the other, you know what's going on. And I'm like, if you just kind of like question the basics, it could make a lot of sense. Don't assume, oh, you know what, this guy is some super smart genius, blah, blah. It's more like, if you just ask yourself, and this is from like probably a retail SME perspective. Okay, this from a user perspective. If you ask yourself, why, if I can send a text message, Instagram picture, FaceTime abroad, why can't I do the same with money? Like the way like money is an old concept, and so the way we use it doesn't necessarily need to be the same how it's always been used. Just like if I say to you, can you, if we were in school and I said to you, can you do a research paper for me? Are you going to go right now in 2025 to the library to try find a book? Or are you going to go on Google? Or even today, are you going to go to ChatGPT and say, okay, this is the question, break it down for me? You've like evolved with the technology, and I just feel like money could do the same thing. And so if users understand that, Then banks is like, then SMEs, you're like, oh, my customers, I can service my customers in a whole bunch of different ways. I can service them globally now because they can interact globally and I can pay in this way. And and I don't have to wait 2 days, 3 days, 4 days to get payment. And on this side, the person say they're paying and have to go back and forth to chase finance. Did it pay? Has it hit the account, etc.? Then you're like, okay, cool. I can ramp up flows. I can ramp up taking orders. I can ramp up doing my deliveries. And then from a multinational, from a bank perspective, it's like, oh, now my portfolio companies, as a bank, my customers on the SME section are more efficient. I could do bigger loads. I can do more stuff. I can buy these companies. I can do more M&A. There's like a knock-on effect of like we all just jump into this new technology that everyone kind of wins from. And so yeah.
I absolutely love that. And it's very aligned with what we're doing, because essentially it's doing what we're doing from a traditional finance standpoint, but bringing in automations, insights, and really truly advanced technology into the finance ecosystem of the SMEs, right?
Yeah.
And essentially Web3 does that, but on chain.
Exactly.
So what does the future look like? And it is what my mind's naturally going to. And I see a hybrid approach, which is you can never not be just on fiat, because you will be left behind at some point. But you also need to have fiat to be able to be liquid in case your funds are on crypto or whatever it is. Is it a case where if we look at treasury management, if we look at cash flow, if we look at accounts payable and accounts receivable, there needs to be an element of the finance team? I love that. And it basically explains in an absolutely clear way that there is a requirement for a hybrid approach for finance.
Yep.
Yes, you need to have your fiat, you need to have your treasury management, but you also need to be able to do the same thing with being crypto native or crypto exposed to an extent. Or that's going to be 80-20, 70-30, whatever it is. Each business will have its requirements. 100%. But it's important to be able to have a centralized place as a business today, SME, etc., where you have your finances, your accounts receivable, your accounts payable, your insights, and your reporting. But Web3 allows businesses to do that on chain.
Yeah.
Now, I guess the next train of thought or question is, what technologies are out there that essentially enable that for the SMEs? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, really. The tough thing about crypto in general is endorsing the right company, right?
How about we don't endorse the right company?
Yeah.
And instead discuss the train of thoughts that an SME or a founder should have if they're looking at becoming crypto adopters for their businesses?
Yeah. I think it depends largely on the business that they do and and kind of like the customers that they have. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record. I think stablecoins is a key unlock, and having exposure to an account that allows you to do that. There's some kind of like businesses that allow you to, because like you said, not everyone has adopted crypto. There's this lag period where it's like there's some people who can interact in crypto and there's others who would not dare touch it. And now there's technology companies that sit kind of like in between, and what they'll do is they'll basically allow me to pay you in crypto, but then before it hits your account, they'll switch it from let's say I'm buying something for you $10. It flips just before it hits your account, and they send $9.99 to your account, and then they take a small fee, and then they will keep the stable coins. So you never actually touch the stable coins, but you allow users to now pay with those stable coins. That's kind of like a middle ground. Then adopting stable coins or crypto payments allows you to increase the exposure of customers who are able to pay. Ideally, you're buying an asset that may appreciate over time, and so that could, if you kind of like model it correctly, could bring kind of like extra exposure or cash flow over time in that regards as a company. But from that point of view, you kind of have to manage the yeah, you have to have some sort of treasury management system. I would, to be 100% honest with you, I think in the SME space, there's not many, and it's not great. I think because we haven't this regulation is evolving now, which is allowing companies to actually participate in crypto, and because the regulation is evolving, then SMEs will be able to provide it, or provide services in and around the space. And because that is then happening, there's going to be an increased need in kind of like some sort of infrastructure and systems. And from my knowledge today, yeah, that's probably a gap that needs, it's a gap that needs work. Nothing screams to mind.
One of the interesting things that we've been working on is, of course, the crypto exposed clients. So clients that have both their treasury management in a fiat perspective,
Sure.
but also the treasury that they require from a crypto element.
Sure.
And alongside that, of course, there's the FARA compliance and all sorts of different items, which I'd love to pick your brains on, but that's for a separate point of conversation.
Sure.
And as we're going through their finances, of course, there's their fiat balance, and as you're reconciling and doing the the net asset validation for the period, it's coming up to 20.7 mil dot. And as you're doing the reconciliation, as you're doing the exercise, seeing that number go up significantly because the actual crypto market itself is bubbling up. It's such a surreal experience because you're literally seeing your money, of course, appreciating in value, or depreciating, depending on how the market is. And that's the importance of having a very strong treasury management
100%.
capability. Now, this is, of course, high net worth individuals. But for the SME space, this is just as important because we know how tough it is to manage a business, getting paid on time, paying your suppliers, paying your staff. So the natural order of things is the mass adoption of Web3 and crypto for the SME space with the right compliance and having the right team supporting you is crucial.
100%.
Right? Now, wrapping up, is there a specific myth in crypto that you wish you would die?
No, and the reason I say no is because I think before I would say, it's not all scammers, isn't this and the other. But there's this idea that, and I think it's from Game of Thrones, and it's this idea that chaos is a ladder. And chaos is a ladder basically means that in the chaos brings opportunity. If people find if everyone agrees on a thing, oftentimes in society, there's nothing really left to squeeze out of the thing. But if there's some sort of debate on, this thing's not going to work, this thing is going to work, this and the other, then there's opportunity in that. If you can kind of find your way around it, there's this concept in finance and crypto, which is like, you're always chasing alpha. You're always chasing kind of like this edge in information before it becomes like commonplace knowledge and before it becomes mainstream. So there's nothing I would change. I'll let the market be the market, because again, I believe chaos is a ladder, and that's how I like to play.
I love it. And it speaks volumes in terms of how you approach the market in the industry as well. It's not a wishy-washy, I wish everyone was nice type of approach, because we all know the reality. Sometimes business is ruthless, right? And you need to be able to navigate those waters. For sure. Now, for anyone that's trying to navigate those waters, what's one piece of advice you'd have for them being able to build in this space?
I would personally, this is the reason why I've had people for years say, you should start a podcast, you should do content, this, that, and the other. And I've always erred on it, away from it. It's because I personally think the space moves so quickly. There's so much things that happen that if someone can like confidently give advice again and again, they're often a scammer. Either they're a scammer or they're delusional. They've had a couple of good wins and they just haven't had the time where the market has like corrected them. So I would say there's no individual guru. There's no one person in crypto that I'm just going to follow this person on YouTube, I'm going to follow this person on Twitter, on Instagram, etc. And I'm just going to do whatever they say. I would say that although it's not the most convenient thing, you want to have diverse thought and opinion in the space. And so you want to have a mix of the on-chain crypto trader degens to just look at what's kind of going on. You want to have the institutional focus you want to have people in and out the space. And so you kind of want to have a diverse set of perspectives as you look at it. And then as you start to see the patterns of, okay, this stable coins is coming up a lot. What is stable coins? And you go and do your research. Okay, I kind of get that now. Then you kind of like build upon it. But I just don't think that, and this is coming from any perspective. You're coming from the high level multinational bank perspective. There's no one guru who's the expert for banks, who's been this trader nah. If you're coming from the SME perspective, there's no one guru, and if you're from there's no. So I just say that to say, the advice would be, as you explore the space, there's no one person that has all the information. The space is so big, things are moving so fast. Everyone has gaps, everyone has blind spots, everyone makes mistakes. You just need diversified thought, and it's not as complex as you think it is.
Bayo, absolutely loved it. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Any final thoughts before I wrap up?
No, thanks for having me. I think I've covered all the main points. I think your questions are amazing, and similarly to how you have complimented me in your growth, I really admire everything that you've done and achieved. I still believe there's so much untapped potential, obviously being who we are, but I want to say that your whole setup, again, I'm not sure how much you shared with I suppose publicly, but knowing you and knowing everything that's got, I'm very proud.
Appreciate you, bro. You know, at Finalytics, we always say that the future of finance is clarity. And as part of that, whether it's through traditional systems, blockchain, Web3, numbers is how you stay in control of your business, right? Now, if you're a founder or a business owner and you're trying to modernize your finance from forecasting to data, strategy, check out Finalytics. You know, we've got the website or domain on the description. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Feel free to message me directly. And if you enjoy the conversation, subscribe to FinTalk for more honest conversations on money, growth, and what's next. Bayo, once again, I appreciate you, bro. Thank you so much for coming, and yeah, let's make a move.
For sure.
Awesome.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, bro.